G'day legends, it's Blake and Kelly back for another episode of the Sports Medicine Project. Now, if the audio sounds incredibly better, we've officially hit the big time. We've got a couple of mics. We only have one mic set up at the moment because I've been playing around with GarageBand for about, feels like the last 8 days, trying to get the two mics in as the input for it to come as the output, and then I realised that you actually need headphones, and I can't remember the last time I owned a pair of, what are they called? The cordless headphones. So
I used to love them, and then you were like, you can't use them anymore, they're so old school,
so
and I should have kept them.
I see people running with them, and I think, listen, like, I'll give you a set of mine, you just need to try them once. Bluetooth is the way to go. But anyway, I hope it sounds better. Now, it's Monday afternoon. We just got off the Zoom call with an absolute weapon of a researcher, Dr. Sian Allen. Now, she lives in British Columbia. She basically knows everything about data. What am I trying to say?
Wearable technology.
Yeah, wearable technology and just data interpretation. We talked all about the Whoop, the Garmin, basically,
sportswear innovation.
Sportswear innovation, how accurate the sleep is, how to interpret the data, how not to kind of feel bad about interpreting the data, and
it was awesome. I learned so much.
Yeah, it was great. So that'll be coming out next week. But yeah, first international guest, and it was an absolute cracker. Now I've got a sports dietitian coming on as well pretty soon. Hopefully, we're going to have a foot and ankle surgeon coming on soon. We're going to have a couple of weapon sports podiatrists coming on doing our part 2 of foot orthotics, and I'm not going to say who it is, but another researcher from America who knows a lot about running surfaces in the interaction and how kind of the kinetics and kinematics work with our body, which will just be insane.
Yeah. Big plans. I'm excited.
Yeah, it'll be awesome. So, Kelly, before we jump into today's topic, which it's a controversial one, and I'm playing devil's advocate today because we see all the stuff about it, but we'll talk about it soon. What did you learn? And what annoyed you this week?
So it's been a long weekend here, and I have been obsessed with this new documentary series on Netflix. You guys have to get around it. It is, I can't remember what it's called, something about national parks, but Barack Obama is narrating it, and he does a bloody good job, I must tell you. But they were showing the killer whales or orcas last night when I was watching it, and they were sneaking up on a grey whale mother and their calf. And the way that they kill the grey whale calf to eat it is they have to continually take turns jumping on its back to drown it so that it dies that way. And then they all just eat it. And it was really tragic and really sad, but it was also quite incredible. They're just very smart. The mum was trying to help it. Anyways, you guys have to watch it. That's what I learned.
That's right. I mean, if it was in a running event, I'd probably do the same thing if I had to get first. But anyway, what annoyed you this week?
Oh, I didn't even think about that one.
Come on, surely.
I was trying to put my elastic shoelaces on my shoes for a while. That was bothering me a little bit.
You were spending a while doing that.
Yeah, I had to get it through the holes and they weren't fitting. So
yeah, Kelly's racing this week in the half Ironman, so we had to get these laces to pick up those extra few seconds.
On transition.
Yeah.
Could be the difference between first and second.
It could be, or 50th, 51st anyway. We'll see.
What did you learn? What annoyed you? Mine were pretty measly, so come up with something better.
Yeah, it always seems to be related to sports medicine stuff. And I've been doing this a bit lately, so nobody's safe. I've been going and just having a look at people's websites, like for their clinic, and I came across this one clinic down in Tasmania, and I was on their Instagram, and they were talking about FMT, which is foot mobilization therapy, which is just a fancy name of pushing someone into a bit of extra range of motion. Anyway, they had posted what FMT is, and they said, when can FMT be, like, when's it indicated, and for what conditions? So flat feet, plantar fasciitis, high arch feet, heel spurs, sciatica. I could not believe it. Like,
is that what you learned this week?
Fuck? No, that's what annoyed me. Like, saying that you can treat someone's... There's so many, like, saying you can treat someone's high arch. Like, what the fuck? That's not even a diagnosis. And then saying that even FMT can do that. Oh, I screenshotted it and put it on our story. I didn't tag them in it because I'm not that kind of person. But, that just really irked me. Like, I don't have to right every wrong out there, but like someone's going to see that and think, fuck, I've got flat feet. I better go get some mobilization because that's going to fix me. Anyway.
How would that fix them? Is it going to change their flat feet?
No, of course not.
No,
that's the whole idea.
That's what I mean. Is that what they think it's
I don't know.
Do?
That's what they thought. Well, they got 7 likes on the post, so I dare say it probably wasn't taken in very well. Yeah, anyway, so nobody's safe. And if I post something like that, I'd want to be called out. I'd want someone to hit me over the head with a bat if I posted something like that.
You had people getting up you for your deadlifting technique.
Yeah. And I full-on went hard on this guy, and he didn't reply back to any of my questions. And I feel like a bit of an idiot, but I just pulled. I was like, oh, hey, mate, I work at the university. I can get you some access to the studies if you don't have access to them. I don't know what you do. And he didn't reply to me, which I don't like to strawman people, but he deserved it. And what did I learn? I learned that swimming in wetsuit shorts makes you swim like 20 seconds quicker per 100. I could swim about a minute 50, minute 55, and now I reckon I could comfortably swim a minute 30, minute 35 for a K and a half. Probably, maybe.
No way.
Yes, I could for sure. It made such a difference with those shorts on there. Anyway, I've got a race in 2 weeks, so we'll definitely see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, if you're going to Nelson's Bay and you're in the Clydesdale category, I would think again, because there's going to be a storm coming. I'm coming. Anyway, so Kelly, what's our topic today?
I'm excited. Strength training for running injuries and performance. So something that we've been posting a fair bit about lately on our Instagram page through some stories, and something that Blake and I are quite passionate about. But we thought we'd put it all together into a podcast and have a little bit of a chat about it.
Yeah, and we're not going to be sitting here for a couple of hours, which we definitely could, but we're just going to try and keep it somewhat shorter and then just kind of drip feed to you guys, because it's a lot to take in. There's a lot of things to think about as well. So don't expect everything in one. If we miss something, very likely we'll get to that very soon.
Yeah.
So what do you want to say? What do you want to start with?
I guess what we would define as strength training. Do you want to talk about that? What do you define as strength training?
I define strength training loosely as doing some stimulus, some form of heavy resistance with weights somewhere near your capacity for an extended period of time with the goal to build tissue capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so working somewhere near your capacity of what you can lift, I guess, and then following or doing that repeatedly, consistently with general strength and conditioning principles, which is probably a simpler way to put it, but that's how I think of it.
Yeah.
What about you?
I agree. I think it needs to be going somewhere close to failure. It doesn't have to go to failure every time.
Yeah, and using...
But somewhere close to failure.
Which you can use, like, an easy term is just RIR, which is reps in reserve. So if you want to, even if you're just programming strength training for someone and you don't want to say, hey, just go near your failure, just say, hey, do it until you've got about 3 reps in reserve, and you can kind of guess a little bit. Yeah, sorry
Sometimes that takes a bit of practice, though. Sometimes if someone is very new to strength training, they haven't done it before, sometimes I'll just give them dumbbells and I'll say, do as many as you can until you can't, just to give me an idea of what their limit is. Because sometimes you'll give someone, say, like 10 kilo dumbbells and they're like, oh, that's too heavy, I can't do that. And so you're like, all right, fine, give them 5 kilo dumbbells, and then they'll do whatever exercise it is, and then they can do 30, and you're like, okay, that's too light, so we need to actually up that, because that is not achieving what we want to achieve. And that's an opportunity for me to educate them on what the goal is and what it needs to look like and what it needs to feel like as well.
Isn't though, like, I wouldn't do that for a novice. Well, I'm just going to say, because we're talking about runners, if I'm seeing a new runner and they've never done that, I'm not telling them to go to failure. I'm giving them, probably something maybe halfway, like 50% of their capacity, because I don't want to say, hey, go out and do 3 sets till failure and blow yourself up. You want to just drip feed them.
Yeah, I agree. But I think you need to find something to get them started, and I think you need to educate them on what it should feel like, because if someone's never done strength training before, which is common for runners, they don't understand what that feeling is of
failure,
working close to failure.
Yeah.
And they look at dumbbells and think, oh, that looks kind of heavy, that must be right for me. But in actual fact, they're probably a lot stronger than what they think.
Yeah,
and they
you
can
don't
do
really
more.
know.
And you don't know until you try.
Yeah, and like obviously we've been strength training for years and years. Like I've been doing bicep curls since I was bloody 15 in my old boarding school gym. Like I reckon probably the bicep curls, probably biceps in general, I'm that toned. Like if someone said I want you to go out and do 16 reps, I reckon I could pick a weight. So I guess you're right with being new to strength training, you probably do need to get used to, or just get a bit of a taste of that feeling and just see where you sit, but not too much because you don't want them to be like go out and do a max set of calf raises and be like, sweet, I can't run now, because you will be like, if you're new, you'll be sore for days. Like I still get sore, for a couple of days now and then.
I'm thinking of a runner that I see, and they were telling me that they do strength training, and I was like, okay, cool. What does that look like? And they stood up and stood behind their chair and rested their hands on their chair and did some mini squats, like the miniest squats you've ever seen. And he said, these are the ones that I do because I think it's quite good for my knees. And in my mind, I'm looking at that thinking that is doing fuck all. Like that is doing absolutely nothing. So for him, I think that's a pretty good example of a person that you need to actually educate them on what is strength training and what does it feel like.
Yeah. And that's the challenge. The challenge is, because we know it's shit. Like, it's not worthless, but it's almost worthless. But
what is those mini squats?
It's just, for example, the mini squats. I guess what I would want people to take away from this, how could you have that person see that it's probably not worth what they're doing? I mean, like we always talk about create doubt, have them have the, epiphany, but how did you address that?
I showed him. So I got him to put a barbell on his back and sit down and stand up from a box as many times as he could before his legs started to feel tired.
Yeah.
And he could do 20 with a barbell on his back through a greater range of motion. And then that was my conversation.
And said it was harder?
Yeah, I said it was harder, but still that was pretty doable. I was like, okay, so if you can do full-ish range squats with 20 kilos on your back and that's still relatively easy, then what's that doing?
Yeah. And I guess you could even say it like if they're running 100 kilometers a week, you said, hey, if you're running 10 kilometers a week, do you think you're going to become a better runner? That's probably similar to what you're doing with these little mini squats, maybe. I don't know. If you
I would argue that running is better for strength than that.
Yeah. As long as you just have to relate something in their mind and for them to have the meaning. Because I guarantee, and I've made this mistake before, I'm telling you now, even if and I enjoy understanding, the research and the application and clinical concepts and things like that. If you tell someone or quote some studies at them, it doesn't do anything. They might just nod and say, yeah, that makes sense. But if you haven't changed their mind, you're not going to change their mind just with a couple of stats.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's why we're so lucky in that we've got access to a gym so that we can, for this topic in particular, you can walk someone through it and show them. And that's the problem that I've had in the past where I haven't had access to weights or a gym and you're explaining to people what they need to be doing, but you're not actually able to get in there and try and test it. So you don't know what's happening when they leave the clinic.
Yeah, it's true. Like, I don't know. I say this now. I don't know if it's true, and I apologise if any clinicians take this the wrong way, but if I was working in a doctor's surgery or I just had a little clinic room with no gym and I saw a good runner that wanted to do strength training, I'd nearly honestly have to send them somewhere else. I know most people wouldn't do that because, you're losing money or whatever, but, you kind of would have to, I think.
Especially if they wanted some sort of close supervision with their strength
training. Or even
training.
just to test them. Like, how do you know? Like, if they say, I can do 10 calf raises with 40 kilos, what does it look like? You don't even know.
Well, I guess for some people, they want you to come up with some sort of home program. And during COVID, a lot of people had to come up with their home programs.
Yeah. But so at least you can see them.
Do you think that was enough, though? Do you think that you can get enough out of strength training at home? Or
yes,
do you think you need a gym?
I do, but I think that I think to test them and see where they're at, I think for a short period of time, but I still think you need, and when we, like, if you're saying at home, I mean at home with weights and things like that. Like, if you're testing them in a little clinic room with nothing, not a step, not a dumbbell, not a kettlebell, just a couple of fucking resistance bands, I don't think it's worth it. And then if you're giving him a program to, hey, I want you to go home and do 3 sets of 40 reps of calf raises from the ground, I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah. I agree. And then that sort of, I guess we need to sort of clarify strength training a little bit further. In terms of strength and conditioning principles, if we're talking about strength training and based off what this particular sort of systematic review has, where we're talking about reps around 3 to 10. So anything above that's probably moving more into muscle endurance or
I mean, you train
hypertrophy, I guess you could
say. Hypertrophy, strength. But you train, like, you never train just one system. Like, pardon me, you do, even if you're doing 10 to 15 reps, you're still getting stronger.
Exactly, but yes, I agree.
But I do agree with you moving into those reps.
And if a runner is doing so much high volume stuff, then I think strength training is a very good way to add load in a different way.
Different way?
Yeah, by not doing heaps of repetitions or high repetitions and instead going heavy and doing less. I just think it's a different way to build capacity and load tissues.
But do you really? You don't actually load it in a different way because you're doing the same.
But you're producing maybe a different stimulus.
Yes, but you don't load it in a different way. The muscle still works the same. They just had to get political on you then.
Yeah.
Cool. And we need to make sure we differentiate here because injuries and same with like technique, injury and performance are different. Like if we're talking about injury, like strength training for injury, it's a different conversation to strength training for performance. So make sure that even when you read stuff online, make sure someone is differentiating between the two because the research is different.
Yeah. So, and for the sake of this conversation, we're going to talk about runners who aren't currently injured. So this isn't strength training for the currently injured runner.
Yeah.
This is strength training for the uninjured runner in terms of performance or injury prevention.
Yeah, and that was in
quotation
marks. I hate it. It gets me so mad. People, clinics, everyone's saying, "Hey, we do this top 10 exercises to prevent injuries." You cannot fucking prevent a running-related injury. You just can't. I don't care if it's non-political or how political I'm being with the term. It gives people the wrong mindset. Because they do something and then they think that it's going to prevent the injuries, and it's not the case. It's likely, we know the incidence can be as high as 74% over 6 months. It's probably inevitable that you will have a running-related injury in your life. So I think it's probably better you understand that and to say, hey, it's likely, we've got research to support that, rather than saying, do this fucking calf raise at 10 degrees range of motion and you'll prevent all your running injuries. Yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are. I don't like it, and I don't know if it's that we can't prevent injuries, or if we don't know enough about them yet. Well, we can't at the moment. Yeah. I know we always say that about everything. We don't know a lot about this, but we'll fucking research it for like 40 years. But look, we couldn't find much even for this conversation today. So there isn't a huge amount out there. Yeah. But, if something works and you do a controlled environment, like that's the idea of science, is it? Like if strength training really is preventable against running-related injuries, why, when we research it, it doesn't happen? Obviously, there's plenty of other variables, but you would expect it to work if you think it works. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyway, so do you use strength training for runners? Yeah, I do, because there's other benefits. Why? Why do you use it then if there's no research for it? Because then you could sort of argue, why don't you use dry needling? Because there's a risk of adverse reactions with dry needling. Dry needling creates, I think, a self-reliance, and the narrative is very different. Mm-hmm. So if I give you a narrative to think about dry needling, it's different to strength training. There's no harmful effects of strength training, and strength training can improve performance, so why wouldn't I give it to them? Do you give it to patients with the intention of trying to prevent injuries despite what the research says? No, because I know I can't prevent injuries. But I'm still going to do it because out of all the things that they do, it's probably the best spend of their time, definitely overstretching and foam rolling and things like that. And there's so many other benefits for like reducing pain sensitivity, improving performance. And I still think, and I know logically it makes sense, with running injuries, like you improve the capacity of the tissue, you should have less injuries. I still think that there isn't any harm in them having a stronger, say, calf.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're going to be foam rolling or stretching or doing something else, I'm like, hey, why not do this? And I know it's going to help you day to day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's why I don't say to them, this is going to prevent your running injuries. And I would happily have anyone ever sit in on my running consults. I never say that to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I just say it's great to build capacity, performance. There's plenty of other benefits. It's a better spend of your time. So why not? Let's do it. And, I can't guarantee or say that it's going to prevent any injury. But to us, and I'll say logically it makes sense. But unfortunately, we don't see it with the research.
Yeah, I agree. I say something quite similar. And I know we said that this is for the uninjured runner, but majority of runners have had injuries in the past. So I think if we can come up with some sort of program that's somewhat biasing towards the injured structure or the weaker area, I think that that's a good idea. I know personally myself, I've had years of dormant hamstring problems, and I can totally feel my hamstrings fatiguing early if I haven't been in the gym for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, which is interesting, because you could say, and I know there's a different term between pain and injury, like injury and sensitivity. So perhaps that's what I was saying before. Actually, we didn't even plan that. Saying like with pain sensitivity, we know that from the research with strength training. Like if you're able to strength train, it may not prevent an injury, but it may reduce your sensitivity during running or after running. So maybe your calf doesn't feel tight or your glutes not sore at the 25 kilometre mark. Yeah.
I think personally, I know that I have so much hamstring inhibition, and if I don't isolate and really try and build strength in them, then they get really fatigued and tired very early if I haven't been doing the strength work. So I certainly see from a personal experience the benefits of it, and I will always recommend some form of strength training to any runner that I see as well, for all of those reasons that you listed before.
Yeah. So there's not much, like the way the research is done as well, generally they look at strength parameters as a risk factor. Like if you have a weaker plantar flexion strength, are you more likely for a running injury and then follow you over time? And then some other studies, are systematic reviews and things like that. Some they give a group strength training and a group doesn't get strength training. They're just observed, 12 weeks out from a marathon. So there's a couple of different ways the studies have done. But if you've come this far, and this person was my supervisor when I finished my 2 years of postgrad research, and that's Peterson et al. And basically his study was titled Biomechanical and Musculoskeletal Measurements as Risk Factors for Running-Related Injuries in Non-Elite Runners, and that was a systematic review and meta-analysis. So reading that study, they go through all the studies, all the references are there. It's an incredible read, and maybe there was 19, I'm butchering, I'm not going to say how many studies were included, but they said that there is insufficient evidence to support biomechanical and musculoskeletal measurements as risk factors for running-related injuries.
What does that mean? What does biomechanical and musculoskeletal measurements mean?
So musculoskeletal measurements might be like hip abduction strength, calf strength.
So it's not necessarily talking about adding in strength training?
No, but looking at, and that's what I was saying, the way that the studies are done. So it's like, if, let's say that calf weakness is a risk factor for running-related injuries, you could then, I guess, hypothesize that doing calf strengthening will reduce that risk of a running-related injury. So I'm going a roundabout way, but that's all the research we've got. Whereas if it said calf weakness is not a risk factor, well, then we know if we do strength training, it doesn't matter because it's not a risk factor. So that's the idea of that study. And they said there was wasn't the idea of the study, but some of the studies included within that meta-analysis detail that. And when they look at biomechanical measurements, it's things like rear foot angle, running gait, kinematics, functional movement screening, things like that.
See, that's what I mean when I say I don't feel like there is enough to say that we can't prevent injuries yet. I just don't think we know.
You can't say prevent, you got to say reduce.
Yeah, but I just don't think we have enough, because I would say that that's not necessarily what we're really talking about.
Well, and I understand it's the best. Well, I think the best way we've got to make any assumption, but we've got other studies here where they've done it, and why didn't we find a difference? Like if it works.
So what's the other one?
So the other one is So a randomized study of strength training program to prevent injuries in runners of the New York Marathon. First-time marathoners aged 18 and over. One group got strength training. The other group was an observation group. Now, I will say the strength training group only did 10 minutes of strength training 3 times a week using written and video instructions. So the program was quads, hip abductor, core muscles. So not a great, I guess, overall lower limb strength training program. But they found no difference at all. And that was for 12 weeks.
Yeah, see, I would question the
methodology, I guess. Yeah.
Methodology
So
of that,
another one
sure.
is hip muscle weakness, a predisposing factor for patellofemoral pain in female novice runners. So before the start of a 10-week program, they tested the isometric strength of the hip flexors, extensors, adductors, internal external rotators, and they followed them over 10 weeks. And then during that 10 weeks, they diagnosed, or an orthopedic surgeon diagnosed whether diagnosed them having patellofemoral pain, and there was no increase, or it was relatively the same between people that had, weaker isometric strength compared to people. And
again, see, I don't think that's really relevant to what we're talking about.
Well, we've got to base it off something.
I know what you mean, but I'm just trying to drive my point home that I don't think that there's enough out there for us to be able to make a call and say...
No, I'm definitely saying there could be something different. Yeah. However, I have evidence to say that it's not. Mm-hmm. You just have, and I'm not saying, what's that saying?
I think there's an absence of evidence.
Yeah, so again, it could come out tomorrow and I could be completely wrong, but I've got something to base it off. Whereas what if you're making the other argument, what do you have to base it off, other than saying there's not any research out there?
That there's no harm in adding it in, and theoretically, if you are able to improve the tissue capacity through strength training, then it, in my mind, makes sense that those tissues are going to be able to withstand higher loads and forces.
Yeah, I said that there's definitely no issues with adding it in.
Yeah.
That's not the question. Definitely not the question. The question is, do you think that you can give someone a strength training program and prevent running injuries?
I would never be able to confidently say that. I would not be able to confidently say that, no.
Okay, so
there's so many other factors that go into a running related injury.
Of course, it's definitely multifaceted, but you can't always pull that card. Like, I'm saying that I'm pretty confident that because I've got something to base it off. Again, I'm happy to change, and I don't always change my mind, but if we are doing these studies, I know they're not perfect, but shouldn't we see something? Shouldn't we see maybe the group of women that had stronger hip muscles not get injured as much? Why didn't we see that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So, one I wanted to talk about just quickly before I finish, because we're on the same category. So this one was titled The Relationship Between Isotonic Plantar Flexion Endurance, Navicular Drop, and Exercise-Related Leg Pain in a cohort of collegiate cross-country runners. So there was no significant difference identified for isotonic ankle plantar flexion endurance between the group of college runners with and without exercise-related leg pain. So I guess, again, it's looking at is weakness a risk factor, but if weakness isn't a risk factor, well, then you can't argue that you've got to get it strong.
I think you can still get strong without weakness. I think strong people can still get injured.
Oh, definitely. But if someone's like, we're saying, do you need to is strength training the be all and end all? Or probably not. We're probably not saying that. But we're saying strength training for runners. If someone has something weaker than another group, that weak tissue or weak muscle should get injured more. But it doesn't. So what's the point of giving them strength training? Because the idea of, and again, strength training does many things, but if strength training makes someone stronger, but being stronger isn't protective against a running away injury, what's the point in doing it? Man, I'm on fire right now. I feel like I should be in a conference. You know what I'm saying? Does that make too much sense?
But I still think that you could get injured as it. Well, yeah, I guess that one.
Yeah, and let me be clear. I give strength training all the time. I freaking love it. It's awesome, and I do it myself. Plus, yeah, it's good. But I just don't want us to be so like, this is it. You can I'll prevent your injuries. I'll reduce your injuries. Let's build up your capacity, and you'll be fine. But also, in saying that, you do have to go somewhere, and I think you need to go somewhere with the least amount of risk. Yeah. Cool.
And then on the flip side, when we talk about performance,
yes,
that's where things get a little bit more interesting. So this particular systematic review included, which I find interesting if you didn't listen to our last podcast or the podcast before maybe on female athletes, it included 352 males and 96 females, so a few females, but not many.
Not enough.
Not many. And it did improve running economy, time trial performance, or anaerobic capacity, and their strength. So the type of resistance training used throughout it was predominantly focused on heavy resistance training and explosive resistance training. There was a couple that included core stability and a couple that included body weight exercises, but the overall majority was the heavy resistance training and explosive resistance training, sort of comprising of 2 to 6 sets of 3 to 10 repetitions. So that was a pretty promising systematic review in the performance world, I would say, which is, if we had a patient that walked in and said, I want to get faster at running 5 kilometers, then I would confidently say, you need to try and implement, or we need to come up with some sort of strength and explosive jump training program for you.
Yeah, and inevitably because again, you're training many systems, inevitably you'll increase that tissue capacity. Now, I do want to mention on this, if you are listening to this and you know us personally or you don't know us at all, I know I can definitely probably seem like I attack a little bit when someone says something. It's definitely not a go ever at you personally. It's just trying to get to the bottom of what's true. And I mean, shouldn't we always want to do that?
Yeah.
Like if someone called me out for being wrong and I'm like, crap, maybe I actually am wrong or I need to rethink something.
Never think that, do you?
Yeah, because I never am. But if I say something and you call me out and it makes logical sense, I'm thinking, I only want to get better. I only want to get to what's true, and I want to be a good weapon clinician. So I'm happy to take feedback. So I think if you're listening to this and you think, no, I just give stretching or I just give 8 sets of 50 squats, just question it or question us or tell us why you do it and why you think it's better.
Yeah, we would love to hear different perspectives because no one really knows. Like as we've sort of already highlighted throughout this podcast, we don't really know. It's just what we do because it's our bias and we think it works. But if you've got a different reasoning, tell us.
Yeah, and actually, caveat to that, make sure it's fucking good reasoning. Some people comment, 1, they can't even spell, 2, it doesn't make any sense, and 3, they don't even answer half the stuff that we say. So I've made a pact to myself, I don't know about you, I'm only going to reply to stuff that's genuine. I've left a couple of comments because I just spend too much time and I'm like, I'm arguing with a wall. This is stupid. So if it's genuine, I'm happy to get in a bit of dialogue and become better. But anyway,
I just wanted to touch on one other article that I just found, which I did find quite interesting. Again, if you didn't listen to our podcast maybe 2 episodes ago, go back and listen to it on female athletes.
It was good.
This was a randomized control trial looking only at female runners. There was only 19 in the article, so I think that's a bit of a flag straight away. I think with something like running, you probably need to be looking at bigger sample sizes because it is so common. But this particular article included heavy strength training and it was looking at running performance in females, and they found no improvement in running performance in any of the groups. So there was one group that there was one group that did strength training on top of their running, and then there was the other group that did just their running, and they measured it by a 40-minute time trial situation or a 40-minute for distance or something like that. The other thing that I wanted to comment on though, just from this study, and again, just due to the relevance of our recent conversation. There was no mention of where each woman was in their menstrual cycle, or if they were experiencing a normal cycle, or if they were on any form of contraception. So these are things that just sort of pop out to me and kind of make me question about the validity of the results when we are studying the female population.
What shoes were they in? Doesn't say. No Vaporflies.
Don't know. I think Connie's.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, so that was either side. One showed improvement, one didn't. I've seen plenty of studies that say, I don't have them here, that show strength training improve running economy. I mean, like, if shoes can improve running economy, certainly strength training can. But I was thinking, even when I was in the gym today and we were thinking about doing this episode, you know, if you had 45 seconds to explain to someone roughly how you do it, I mean, I just look at whatever their capacity is. So I'll find whatever their 8 or 10 rep max is, or I'll watch them do it and try to see if they've got a couple reps in reserve. So they can do, just argument's sake, 10 single leg calf raises off a step. I'll say, great, let's do 4 sets of 6 or 4 sets of 8, 3 times a week for either 2 or 4 weeks. And then I'll retest them. And then if it's gone up to, say, they can do now 4 sets of 15, or they can do 15 as their max, I'll say, great, find some weight, whether it be 10 or 15 kilos, and let's do 4 sets of 10 or 4 sets of 12. I won't just keep going up and up and up until they can
reps.
In reps. I'll just start to add weight. Generally, when they're around if they can do 10 to 15 body weight and they look pretty good. So, add some weight, and then it's just gradually improving from there, and adding in obviously other exercises, but just doing that. And that's very, very simple. There's plenty more that you can add to that, but just something like that. Like, strength training doesn't have to be really specific. Just some general principles of working somewhere, not close to your max, but, somewhere near your max, and then take a couple of reps off, 3 to 4 sets, have a rest day, do some other stuff with it, and then gradually building on that. And then if for running, I'll also add in some plyometric stuff. But yeah, that's how I would do it. I mean, what would you say if you had, not long to explain to someone
about what I do?
Yeah, like general principles that someone could walk away tomorrow and go, great, Blake said, find their capacity, take a couple of reps off, 3 to 4 sets, a couple of times a week, and then gradually build them every 2 or 4 weeks. Whether you add weight, reps, sets, intensity, you can add plenty of stuff.
I think I probably look at it maybe a little bit differently. Like I would always sort of program for someone a squatting type movement, a hinging type movement.
The calf raise was just an example. So I'm saying principles for the programming.
So, and I guess on that note, then I like them to be compound movements for the most part, unless there are areas of specific thing that we're
more
looking
like
at.
Sets and reps and progression, not like the specifics.
Well, it changes. I don't do the same thing for every exercise.
Yeah, but generally, like you've got 45 seconds, someone's going to die.
That's what I was saying before you interrupted me. So for a squat movement or a hinge movement, such as a deadlift, I would program more so heavy. So I'd go like 5 sets of 5 for the squat and the hinge. And then for the other accessory...
How would you find that 5 rep max?
What I was talking about at the start of the podcast.
Okay.
And then...
So push them till failure.
No, I would just assess them. I would say, all right, 5 reps on an empty barbell, easy. All right, let's add 5 kilo plates to each side.
Okay.
Easy. All right, let's add 2 kilo plates to each side. All right, that looks a bit harder.
Great.
Can you do any more?
So find their capacity by just slowly building up.
Yeah.
And then for compound movements like squat, deadlift, 5 sets of 5, bench press. And then what about just generally?
I usually would go 3 sets of 6 to 8. For like a lunge, I don't know, calf raise.
Why do you do 3? Why not 4?
I don't know, maybe I could do 4.
And why 6 to 8? You like that range? Like, what's so special about that range?
I put higher repetitions on I guess what I would call accessory exercises, because I think that they're good capacity builders, but also I don't want them to be working through 5 sets of 5 for every single exercise.
Yeah.
So I think it needs to be a higher repetition range so that they are getting adequate
and high
volume.
is like 10 to 15, not like 40.
No, 6. I'd still do 6 to 8.
Okay.
I rarely give runners more than 8 repetitions based off the fact that I just want them to be doing some sort of different stimulus to what they're doing running.
And like, I know, I can't think of the study's name. Like, you can change it, and I know it's about, for the body adapt, you need changes in stimulus, but it's not like changes every freaking week. It might be you do 3 to 6 months of certain strength training and then you might change. So, yeah, don't think that you've got to change it all the time. Other thing I wanted to ask you on accessory exercises. What do you mean by that? Like, what muscles do we have that are extra? They're not. They're all so important in the whole kinetic chain. That shit, I don't like it. Why do you use it?
Well, it changes, I think. So when I'm programming for patients, I will put on their program, like if I'm seeing them in the clinic with me as a one-on-one, then I'll say some sort of split squat variation. So it might be a walking lunge, it might be a lunge, it might be a rear foot elevated split squat, it might be a front foot elevated split squat.
Yeah.
I would say that the key movements or the key lifts is going to be the squat, the deadlift, or the squat and the deadlift for a runner, let's say. And so then anything additional, I'm calling like an accessory-based exercise because I'm going to change it depending on the person. But I probably, by and large, give everyone a squat and a deadlift and then change what else, the other types of exercises depending on them and their weaknesses and what we're working on.
So why is a calf raise... Without saying that better bang for your buck, why is a calf raise better than a squat? Why does it have to be accessory? It's just as important as your glutes.
Because squats and deadlifts are big compound movements that are recruiting lots of different muscle groups at the same time. A calf raise is targeting a specific muscle group.
So why is the deadlift more important then?
It's not more important.
Then why is a calf then an accessory?
I don't think just because it's the term accessory makes it less important.
But it's kind of like you're doing extra?
No,
I
disagree.
Think? What does accessory mean? Doesn't accessory mean extra?
Well, anything's extra.
Well, like if you're doing like this is the base, this is your accessory exercise. That means these are your extra ones, rather than this is the base, calves, glutes, quads. I think I've got you here.
I think that's what you think. I don't think that that's true.
Okay. So what is accessory? What do you think they think when they see accessory?
I don't write that. I don't say that to anyone. I just program it. I'm just saying that for this podcast. Because they change is kind of what I mean. Like everyone is going to get a squat and deadlift variation.
Yeah.
And the rest of them are going to be dependent on the person. Okay. So in my mind, they are accessories because I'm going to vary them throughout the program as well. Okay.
Yeah. All right, cool. And I definitely agree, better bang for your buck doing, if you're time poor or whatever.
Every runner will get some sort of calf raise.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I just don't like the term accessory. I think everything is just as important. But I understand if you've got 10 minutes, it's probably better, or 20 minutes, 30 minutes, you're probably better you do squat and deadlift because you get better bang for your buck. I just don't like the term. That's all right. You don't have to be right all the time. That was good. What do you think? Any takeaways for these guys at home other than nothing? Don't tell people you can prevent their injuries. We've given some good advice on how to basic principles for strength and conditioning.
If you're seeing a runner in the clinic and you don't know what to do with the rest of your 15 minutes,
go through their program.
Do some sort of strength training.
Yeah, and watch them do it.
And progress it. Or go to a gym even, or find some way to load them up and actually really test them and show them that they struggle with certain things and they're probably going to benefit in some way by doing more of it.
Test them. Like, you're not going to snap their Achilles going to failure or loading them up. But so some general principles for S&C, which is great. I guess a little bit of the research saying that maybe we don't have enough to really confidently say strength training is great for preventing injury. It logically makes sense, and Kelly and I both do it, don't get me wrong, but I think the terms we use, I think it's important. I know other people don't think it as important, but I definitely think it is. So what do you reckon? Any take-homes for the team listening? Or I summed it up all right.
If you're strength training, then strength train hard. Don't strength train, you're not going to get changes by doing easy things. It has to test you. It has to be hard. It has to be close to what you can tolerate for it to be worthwhile. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time and your patient's time.
Yeah, that's great. Make it challenging. So remember, 5-star on Spotify. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It's bloody blown up, which is good. And yeah, next week we've got Siarnal, which is Dr. Siarnal, and I want someone to say Doctor rather than Doctor. So yeah, it was an absolute cracker report. We'll be going to kind of promoting it all week, but yeah, it was awesome. And yeah, we're back to our normal routine. We've got our normal topic, which we talk about. Today was strength training for runners. Previously it was how shit dry needling is. We might talk about foot mobilisation therapy, but I could probably sum it up in 10 seconds and say it's shit.
Maybe we should talk about it.
I
don't know what it is.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. I'm pretty sure all the sports doctors and surgeons use it. No, I'm joking. No one ever uses it. Not going to talk about that. And then we've got our case study during the week, which we might even make it a running one this week. I think we should do that patient. And then, we'll be having a guest on and then also doing a case study. But yeah, we're back to our normal routine, back to the swing of things. Uni's back. And yeah, let's get into it. So we'll see you guys next week. And yeah, happy Anzac Day and happy Easter, guys. Yeah, awesome. See you later.